Hey everybody, welcome to the channel. Today let's talk about the 5 KPIs that I look at for my medical practice and what you need to know if you're going to start or scale your medical practice to be just like mine or even better than mine. Let's get right into it. For those of you guys that are new, my name is Brad. I own a multi-million-dollar practice here in Texas in primary care, and I like to help people start or scale medical practices. So first off, what the hell is a KPI? Well, a KPI is often used in business and it's called a key performance indicator. It's just slang for a business metric that you keep your pulse on, data is like trending, on how your business may be doing. And there's 5 of them that I look at pretty much all the time for my practice. All right, the number one that you gotta know is your collections per visit. If you don't know your average collection per visit, you're gonna be really dead in the water. I was helping a pulmonologist and their collection rate was like 65%, absolutely atrocious. My collection rate like 95% because we make people pay at the time of service whenever they check in. Okay, so what did I do for that pulmonologist? Well, it turns out that their collection rate was so atrocious because they weren't even collecting any deductibles at the time of check-in. They were like, yeah, whatever, we'll just send it through insurance and we'll send you a bill later. Horrible. Here they have high patient volume, but they were missing out on 35% of their income, or maybe about 30%, because you're never going to get to 100% of collections. But they were missing out on 30% collections just because when that money walks out the door, there's a good chance that you're never seeing it again, or you're not seeing it until the next time they come in. Well, what if they don't come in once a year? You just gave them an interest-free loan for $120 or whatever that visit cost for an entire year. So I like to look at what is the collection per visit and what should it be? What is also with this KPI is what is your front desk collection rate? All of these things like tie into the money that's owed to us. What percent of that are we actually seeing that we're collecting from that? All right, the next one is new patient acquisition. How many patients per month if you're trying to grow? How many patients per month are you getting? And if you're a specialist, you need to be tracking month over month, year over year. Who's sending you the most patients? Where are they coming from? How are they getting your information? Is it through Google, Facebook? Is it some cardiologist sending you a ton of patients in town, a primary care doc, an urgent care? How many patients are you seeing? Where the hell are they coming from? If you don't know that KPI, then eventually one of those faucets could easily turn off. Like for us, Google is our biggest KPI lead indicator on funneling to my practice. All right, well, actually, I just lied a little bit. Technically, our biggest lead funnel is patient referrals. Patients tell their other friends and family to come see us. When we do our own, like, how did you hear about us? A lot of times I would say at least 50 to 55% of the time, it's my friend or coworker told me I need to see you guys. All right, excluding that, Google then is our next biggest funnel on patient acquisition. And I know that because when Google ads stop performing, I see our new patient visit encounters go down and the schedule start opening up. So the same thing, if you can tell like, hey, this cardiologist used to send us a lot of patients and now they're not sending us anyone, what the hell happened? Did maybe someone leave? I could tell you that one time an urgent care was sending us an insane amount of patients. I mean, just tons. And then it dropped off to like nothing. And I wondered, what the hell happened? Turned out that the manager and the front desk of that urgent care, we were their primary care doc. Well, they had a set of layoffs go through and they no longer work there anymore. So no one in that urgent care knew that we existed. We had 2 people that advocated hardcore for my practice in that urgent care. And then when they left and got terminated or let go, they weren't fired, but there was a drawdown. Yeah, there was no one saying, you know what, you've been to this urgent care like 5 times, this year. Why don't you go to this primary care clinic? So how do we respond to that? We went back to that urgent care. We gave them some cookies. We said, hey, this is us. Boom, faucet turned right back on. That now we have new patients from that urgent care and the new staff members for that urgent care, we offered to see them if they wanted to come see us for their primary care needs, and they did. The next one that I like to look at least once a year is who's your lowest payer? Okay, what is your average KPI or what is your average pay for a certain procedure code? Could be a 99214, a regular follow-up code. Who's your best payer for that? Who's your worst payer for that? This is going to sound horrible, but I got to keep the lights on. And there are some payers for us that pay atrocious. We're talking like 80, 70% Medicare. And then we have other payers that pay us 120, 130% Medicare. Well, this is going to sound kind of crass, but I got to keep the lights on. And if I get too many of those patients that are paying 80% Medicare, I'm not going to be able to keep the lights on. So you got to prioritize those that you have better contracts with, and those that don't, You got to figure out a way to do that. Maybe they only see a mid-level provider. Maybe on the wait list, you prioritize those with the other one. Maybe you then go back to the insurance companies and say, hey, you're our lowest payer. Now you need to pay better than the other ones. There's a lot of things that I won't get into publicly about how we deal with this behind the scenes. However, we have metrics in place to make sure that there are prioritization for certain clients and patients, and that we will work on improving pay from our lower payers. You need to know these numbers though. You need to know who's your lowest payer, because I would say 80% of the time when I query you guys that I consult with, okay, give me the spread. What's your range? A lot of times you have no idea. Okay, the next one that I look at, the next KPI is staffing cost as a percentage of collection. So I think in a very, very lean practice, you can get to maybe 30%. So meaning you take in 100%, 30% go to rent, staff, overhead, malpractice, those kind of things. When it was just me doing everything, our IT, I was plunging toilets, I was answering the phone sometimes for backup, I was even doing my own MA activity a lot of times. Yeah, my overhead was 30%. That's not sustainable, and that's not what I wanted long term. I wanted to grow a business that can make me money while I'm not at work. I also wanted to provide as much care as possible for as many people as possible. So when you're trying to grow and you're trying to basically add on ancillary services, new providers, and other things, your overhead's probably going to balloon to 50 to 60%. If it gets above 60%, it's probably too high, not sustainable long term, and you're probably not taking a salary, or you're going to have to take out debt to fund that expansion. What I look for in a mature practice, meaning you're just cranking on all cylinders, you want that overhead for all the things to be somewhere between 40 and 50%. 30% is usually, in my opinion, too lean. Some people are going to leave. It is not sustainable long term. And above 50% is just way too high, unless you're growing. That's the caveat to that. If it's some capital expenditures that you're spending on growing that are not going to be there long term, all for it. However, those types of things, yeah. However, for a mature panel, you should be close to 40% for your overhead, maybe 45%. The next KPI that I look at is how much are we spending on marketing? And this kind of ties into how many new patients we're getting per month. I have found that for primary care, most of the time, you need to be spending about $3,000 a month to really fill up your schedule. If you're spending less than $3,000 a month, it's likely that you're going to grow a lot slower than you want to grow. I think over $5,000 a month per clinician, you're starting to get into diminishing returns. You're kind of flooding the market. Your return on ad spend, your ROAS as they like to call it, that's just going to become lower and lower. And there's nothing wrong with that, but just know that your customer acquisition cost, how much you're paying to acquire a customer, it's going to start going higher and higher the more money you spend. So for me, whenever we're adding a new provider, and they're not a mature panel like mine where I'm booked out like 4 months in the future and I'm not taking any new patients. For those providers, I like to spend between $3,000 and $5,000 a month on ad spend. If you're spending less than that, you're wasting your time. You're not getting your name out there. You're not serious about growth. Okay, tying into that, we'll do kind of a 6th KPI that ties into all of this. It's like, we'll call it 5.5. That is, how far out are your providers booked in order to think about expansion and growing? When are you ready for this? Well, that's going to be a whole blog post in the future. But what I look at personally, I want them booked out at least 2 weeks in the future. And then when they're 2 weeks booked out in the future, time to add on another provider. Because assuming that provider stays around, assuming that physician, PA, NP, assuming they stick around, they're going to continue to get busier. And they're going to continue to go from 2 weeks to 4 weeks to 3 months booked out in the future. But to help with that overflow and the patient experience, again, I'm all about the patient experience. No one wants to call in and be like, hey, I'm not feeling great. Oh, you know what? We don't have anyone in our practice that can't see you for 3 weeks. Yeah, I'm going somewhere else. There's tons of options for primary care. We like to keep our wait times less than 2 weeks. Ideally, same day, next day, we try to keep it open and we block schedules for it. But if you're customer centric and just hell bent on growth like I am, 2 weeks. 2 weeks, anything beyond that's way too long. All right, you guys, those are the 5 KPIs that I like to look at for my clinic. Thank you for following along. Leave a comment below if you have other KPIs that you like to measure. I'll see you guys on the next one. See y'all later.